Hello, I'm Jann Arrington Wolcott, and I've decided this morning to tell you a story. Uh, this is a very special story for me, and I would ask you to bear with it because it's not an easy story. I think the way lessons come to us so often are through hard experiences. And I'm sure many of you would agree with that. As I am now in my 7th decade, now that really amazes me, I find myself going back through my life, looking at experiences and re-examining them. A psychiatrist friend of mine calls it regression in the service of the ego. And I call it psychic archaeology. You know, looking at things that have happened and examining them over and over again and realizing things that I hadn't realized. It was a time of really unspeakable grief. My 38-year-old son had died, and that was quickly followed by my father, who died of grief, and my mother slid right away into dementia. Actually, David's death took the entire family to its knees, and that's 4 generations of us. So, hard time. My husband and I decided that it might help us in our grief to make a drastic move. And we chose from Santa Fe, where I've lived forever, to Las Vegas, Nevada. We had close friends there, and we thought maybe a change of scene would help our grief. Well, it didn't. You know, they say don't do that, you know, and that's right. But there we were in, actually, I have to go back here. Right before we moved, well, my 18-year-old beloved cat died in my arms. I mean, this story just goes on and on. I won't tell you all of the things that happened, but a very close friend of mine here in Santa Fe said, Jann, why don't you call Small Animal Rescue and get yourself a little dog? Well, I called them and I said, would you just bring me one? I don't care what sex, I don't care, you know, what breed, just bring me something that needs me as much as I need it. And so Oscar came into our lives. And actually, I have a picture of little Oscar here. I don't know if it will show or not, but he was scruffy. He was really the funniest looking little dog. He was 8 pounds of absolute unconditional love, and he had odd spots of white and just scruffy, and oh my God, he was fabulous. He never let me out of his sight. He was right beside me. I took him everywhere, and in an oversized purse, even into the grocery store. He kept a very low profile, but Oscar was just incredible. And so there we are in Las Vegas, and Oscar is with us, of course, and we had our house. We had a wonderful house there, but it backed up into an arroyo that went into the mountains. And we had a park on one side of the house, and we had 10-foot walls around this yard. And so we put a doggy door in for Oscar, and felt that he certainly would be completely safe. Well, we went out to dinner one night, and we came back, and Oscar was gone. Well, my husband ran around the neighborhood, my husband John, calling for him. I was screeching and wailing, of course. I think we really frightened the neighbors. You know, they didn't know what had happened. They didn't come out to check either. And across the wall in the park, on the cement of the sidewalk, I saw a puddle of blood. Well, I went down on my knees by it, and I was raised on a ranch, I know about blood. It was blood. And of course, I just went right down into it. And it took 2 close friends and my husband to get me up and get me cleaned up. Something had gotten Oscar. Well, a friend, a neighbor, said that she had seen a great horned owl in the neighborhood with a 4-foot wingspread. And then signs kept coming up, have you seen my cat, puppy missing? Well, I knew what had happened to their pets. This great horned owl had gotten Oscar. So, days went by in a fog of grief. Have you ever noticed that any fresh grief brings back all the old grief we've had in our lives? It all comes rushing back. So you can imagine the emotional state that I was in, my husband as well, but I'm much more dramatic than my scientist husband is. Every day I would go out and there would be more blood in that spot on the sidewalk. And I thought, my God, this is the killing ground. This is where this owl is taking everybody, all of these pets, to kill them. And so I sat out there with my drum. I'm, of course, a Santa Fean, and I played my drum. I chanted and I prayed, and I wept for all the pain of the world. I had a statue of Our Lady of Guadalupe there. I had Kuan Yin, who is the Chinese goddess of sorrow. Of course, I had Buddha. I was covering all the bases here in my search for some relief from this grief, and it kept growing. Every morning there was more. Well, I called, after about a week of this, I called the neighborhood association. And I said, listen, you've got to do something. I said, a great horned owl is killing the pets in this neighborhood, and every night, and you've got to do something. Well, this very bored sounding man said, ma'am, I don't know what you'd expect us to do. I mean, it's nature. There's nothing we can do about it. That's just nature. Well, my grief turned to rage. And I said, listen, mister, I know about nature. I was raised on a ranch. And I said, if you can't do anything about it, I can. I said, I have a gun and I know how to shoot it. And I'm going to sit here tonight in the park and I'm going to kill it. Well, that was really an empty threat. I mean, I wouldn't have killed this poor owl. I mean, she was a mommy owl. Her babies, it was March. Her little owlets had been born, and she was feeding them, of course, and we mothers will do whatever we have to do, to take care of our babies. So I bore her no ill will whatsoever. But I wanted action. And that got it. So the man no longer sounded bored. He said, oh God, no ma'am. He said, you can't shoot in the park. He said, okay, I'll see what I can do. The next morning, a Park Service truck pulled up early. Well, I went running out. I was in my robe and my sleep matted hair was sticking straight up. And I went running toward them. And of course, when they saw me coming, these 2 young Hispanic men, backed away. I mean, I was, they didn't know what was happening here. And so I came up to them and I said, you've got, I explained the story. And I quickly realized that my poor Spanish was probably better than their English. So I just jumped into my story. And of course, by now I'm crying. And I said, mi perro precioso está muerto. Un tecolote muy grande. El snatchoed him. And I'm blabbering. And I said, see, sangre, every night, more sangre. Well, I saw that one of them had turned his back and his shoulders were shaking. And I thought, oh, he's crying. The other one came up to me and he said, Señora, lo siento. I'm so sorry about your dog. However, he didn't say pero no es sangre. No es sangre. I looked at him with indignation and I said, ¿Qué? "Si es sangre." He said, "I know." "Senora," he points up to a tree branch that is going over, the sidewalk. And I could see that it had been dripping red, sticky sap. He said, "Es sap." Well, I realized how true that suddenly was. I suddenly realized how true it was. And so I started laughing, and so did this young man. And he put his arm around me, and very quickly, all three of us were hugging each other, and we were howling with laughter. Oh, I didn't mention that while they're chopping up the sap, the sap was covered in rose petals. I was sprinkling rose petals from the garden, yellow rose petals, in the sap while I was drumming and chanting and wailing. And it was rose petals in the sap. I realized what a spiritual lesson I had been given. How often in life do we think we know the truth about something? We would bet the ranch on it. And how often are we woefully, sometimes disastrously, mistaken? Relationships, all kinds of histories that go back our whole lifetimes, go back generations, sometimes generations of misunderstanding, and we were wrong, as I was there. I would like to end here by saying I feel that it is so important to talk about things that have bothered us, things that we believe that may not be right, to clear the air with people, and while we still have the time, and not just continue, if we are, putting rose petals in the sap. I appreciate you listening to my story, and I would so appreciate you sharing with me any of your own experiences and the lessons that you've learned from them. Thank you so much. And thank you, sweet Oscar.